Hey guys, this is Blake Helfman. I'm here with Josh Merwin, River Oaks Chrysler Jeep Dodge and Ram. We are super excited about the partnership that Josh and I have put together. Houston International Sports Film Festival, River Oaks Chrysler Jeep Dodge is a premier sponsor. We're going to be offering discounts on cars. We're going to be giving away sports memorabilia, and we are so excited to partner with them. Tell us a little bit about the Sports Film Festival, Josh.
Hi, I'm really excited to introduce BK Fulton. He's somebody that I've been talking to over the past several months. We both share a passion for bringing the Jewish and the Black communities together to fight racism and anti-Semitism. I thought BK was a perfect person to talk to as we start to celebrate Black History Month. We're also announcing a college student short film competition, asking students to create a short film on the first Black athlete from sport at their university. We're also putting together a mentorship board to assist these students as they make these films. So get creative, team up with another student or even a student athlete. Our goal is to screen all these films at the film festival, and I mean all of them. So it's a great opportunity to get your film into a film festival for the first time. Don't forget to sign up on our mailing list for all the exciting announcements we will have as we lead up to the festival, HISFF.org. Thanks a lot. And now let me talk to BK. I guess I'll start off with, what does Black History Month mean to you?
Black History Month is an opportunity to highlight the contributions of people of African descent on America and the world. Too many people start the African American experience in 1619. And the truth is so the oldest civilization started in Africa. And the oldest bones are found there. And so what you find is stories start there and they come forward and they spread the whole gamut of humanity. And so you see influence in so many different places. Unfortunately, we just focus on a small piece of the history, and too often it's the sorrow of the experience. And so for me, Black History Month, and I've really celebrated all the time, but that celebration is about people that look like me and our contributions to humanity, which I think is really the more important thing. When you frame history and looking back in that way, we all become brothers. We all become at minimal cousins, and that share the same rock, the same sun, the same waters. And we ought to treat each other better. We ought to spend more time getting to know each other. I need to know your story. You need to know my story. And when we learn from each other, I think it makes us better. What I have found as a now retired businessman is that reading about the achievements of people that look like me inspired a confidence. People like Lewis Latimer and Granville T. Woods and Dr. George Grant, who's on the cover of my last book, who invented the golf tee and was the first African-American professor at Harvard and was also a dentist. But reading about those stories inspired me as a young engineering student to keep going. I had almost flunked out of engineering, frankly, and reading those stories helped me to go from the probations list to the dean's list to the board of directors at Virginia Tech. And the reason I started my film company is to share those kinds of stories that are a more useful blueprint for achieving and becoming the best version of yourself.
What do you think the impact is of kids seeing people that look like them achieve great heights?
We had Barack Obama in 2008 and then 2012. So we had the first Black president, right, and him. Kamala Harris, the first female vice president and first Black and Asian vice president. We had a Native American vice president at one point. So he was probably the first, minority to serve in that office. But be that as it may, I think the impact is profound because when you're young, the ability to reach for the stars is largely defined by what you see those stars as being. What are the possibilities? Very often when I talk to people who are 10, 20 years older than me, and I asked them why they chose their profession. And most of them say, I would go with my grandmother when she did days work in some person's house, and I saw how they lived, and I asked them what they did. And so I said, oh, I want to be what they are because I want to live like this. So it's a version of seeing. Now, they weren't sure if they could do it because the person didn't look like them. When you see someone that looks like you doing it, it's salve for all of the slights that you've experienced that said you can't achieve at certain levels. And it's rocket fuel because now you know that you've been lied to and that people that look like you can do those jobs too. The travesty of not pushing every child forward, Jewish kids, African-American kids, Latino kids, Asian kids, kids from Appalachia, kids from, wherever, Native American kids, is that if we don't push everybody forward, then we hurt ourselves as a human family. We miss the cures for Alzheimer's. We miss the cures for cancer. We miss the cures for dementia because we're not investing in every potential person who could solve the problem. And we are using bias to select who gets the best opportunity to win. And it's a fool's approach to creating a better society. Our kids deserve better. And the minute we start working together as a human family, you will start to see more accomplishment, more food for people, better health care, fewer diseases that take people out. I think life expectancy will go longer. It's stressful. I mean, can you imagine being a person who is duped into believing that there's certain things that you just can't do because of the way you look? What happened to content of character? What happened to the meritocracy that this country is supposed to be founded on? Work hard, you get this opportunity. And I'd love to see it.
Yeah. What do you think sports' role historically has been in breaking barriers?
Sports has been pioneering in that regard, largely because people wanted to win. And so, tell that to the early athletes who weren't paid well, or the Black athletes and minority athletes who had to stay in separate quarters or run down hotels or end up staying with family or something. The embarrassment of that was hard. It was not easy to break those barriers. But what you find time and time again is that talent and genius are so randomly distributed in the world that if you really want to win, you go get the best wherever the best may be. And it's often in places that we had not historically looked. In fact, people were barred from playing. And then at times when some people got into the league, I'm familiar with some stories where players wouldn't block for a particular quarterback, or they'd step on with spikes a runner who was from a new or challenging ethnicity, challenging for them, because on the one hand, they felt like this opportunity belonged to them. I mean, in many ways, I think people that carry bias in their heart, they're victims too, because they've been fed this false narrative about how superior they are. And it's likely a rude awakening to wake up and find out you're just average.
Yeah. I mean, in some ways it levels the playing field. In other ways, you still have to get over those hurdles. I mean, Jesse Owens, in winning all the medals at the Berlin Olympics, how impactful do you think that was on society, either in Germany or in the United States or all over the world?
I think all over the world. I mean, he actually won in German-made shoes. When the Nazi regime hosted the 36 Olympics, they were looking to show a level of superiority in all things, and particularly, physicality, which people doted on, whether you were a pugilist or a runner. And Jesse Owens went in 4 medals, and it was extraordinary. And so people all over the world recognized that. And in fact, the irony, there's a wonderful film called Adidas versus Puma, and it shows that an image of Jesse Owens and the maker of the shoes that he won the gold medals in actually probably saved the factory. Yeah. Because the American soldiers who came in and they were going to blow up this kind of munitions or weapon, what they thought was a factory for creating weapons. And it proved that they were a legitimate shoe company. And so clearly it had an impact. And so we still have Adidas today, and also the brothers company, Puma. And yeah. But those kind of histories aren't taught. You know, we had to be grown men to learn those things and to learn about those collaborations. And that's why I want to tell more of the achievement narrative. It is not only my belief, but I know it to be true, that many, many, many of the great stories of humanity have yet to be told. And they're Jewish, African-American collaborations, they're times where people of goodwill work with others from other ethnicities. And those teams were winning teams. Those people who were given a shot rose to the challenge. And that's what I love, and what inspires me about humanity is that each time we work together, we can rise to the challenge.
Yeah. And, you know, I mean, for me, getting into this festival experience, you know, it started off because I had a sports documentary that, you know, there was no place for it. You know, and as I started thinking about how to get this out in the world and tell the story specifically about organ donors for my film, realizing that we could create a platform that could not just help tell that story and that cause, but create a platform for other stories. And I, you know, as you mentioned Adidas versus Puma, I mean, it was just a lucky find of a film by me. I mean, I'm shocked that it's not more widely known, and I'm excited to try and get it in the festival and make it more widely known. But it's, you know, it just did an amazing job of showing the intricacies of what was going on during those times.
Absolutely. I definitely agree with that. I think that it was well shot. The story comes through, and human beings, you know, we play this mixtape in our head, and it's like the reel of our lives. And if you can inform that with additional information, other stories, then we're all the better for it, and our mind expands. And I think that many people go along just to get along. I believe in people. I'm an optimist. And I think most people intend well. Too often, there are people that get duped by leaders who promote false information or false narratives. And I think it's up to the creatives and the artists and from all groups to push decency, to push honor, to push what's right. As MLK would say, it's always the right time to do the right thing. And we're challenged at times to help people to appreciate what the right thing is. I mean, I don't think it's often hard, but our country's divided now, and I don't like that. I think that it takes precious resources away from what we could really achieve. I was pleased to see that there's a group of entertainers who decided to step up, and they've created the Black Jewish Entertainment Alliance, and about 170 mega or A-list, you know, people and others in the industry coming together to promote a shared narrative, much like what happened in the 60s when Blacks and Jews worked together to form the NAACP, to form the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, other groups to help get people to register to vote. And so there's been this series of collaborations that can get easily forgotten if you don't tell the stories, if you don't get into the details. And those nuances, I think, is where the richness is. It's where the lessons are. And, you know, we know certain speeches, we know certain individuals, But as we dig deeper, I think we're going to come out better because we're going to get more stories. And then those stories, as I mentioned earlier, that people can relate to. Because it's hard sometimes for people to imagine themselves being MLK or Rabbi Hirschfeld. It's hard for them to imagine being those people. But when you find out that you don't have to be those people, you can take the lessons from those people and be the best version of yourself. And here's what this person did, and here's what this one did, and here's what this one did. And so we have to tell those stories, the additional stories, and that that fabric of multiple points of view moving in a common direction towards justice and righteousness is what our children deserve.
Yeah, I mean, I think cinema is one way to get people to go in somebody else's shoes without even realizing it. I think that's the beauty of the medium we have to tell stories.
Mm-hmm.
That's, I think, one of the powerful things that we'll be able to do with the film festival. And educating kids. Kids aren't born biased. They're not born racist, right? They're taught that. So if we can have more diverse stories that kids can see when they grow up, and especially, one of the things I want to focus on too is animated films for kids, because there's not enough content like that specifically created for kids. And I think that's something, especially with kids looking up to sports figures as their heroes, something that we can kind of use as an educational tool.
I totally agree. I'm working on a sports film now that is going to really rock the industry, we hope. It's a call to action to fight cancer, but it's also the inspirational story of the 1983 NCAA championship, where the NC State Wolfpack team won the whole thing, and nobody thought it was going to happen. They were whatever's less than a Cinderella team, because their top guy broke his foot in the regular season. Nobody expected him to come back. They had to win 9 games in a row to even win the whole thing. They had to win the ACC to get into the NCAA, and then had to win all these games. They won 9 in a row. The last 7 were in the last seconds. And so just these heart attack, nail biter games. And
Houston is all about that clutch city. That's how the Rockets won their championships.
It's a beautiful story. And I'm excited that we'll be working on that and bringing that to the world. But people will be inspired by it. There's faith in it. There's love in it. There's hope. And so again, you talk about the power of sports. We all grew up doing something, or either watching it, playing it, helping on the side. But you can't be alive in the modern world and not know of a couple of sports figures, even if you don't play. If you cut on the TV, they're there. They're in commercials. Yeah. There's promotions. There's all this exciting stuff, and it's a really good method. Sports is a really good method of delivering the medicine that I think can be helpful.
It's interesting because, when I think of sports, from a family perspective, it's most of the time kids are introduced to sports by their parents or maybe grandparents. And I think one of the things that you said earlier was kids that come from impoverished backgrounds, learn about different jobs that they can do by going with a family relative to the job they're doing and say, oh, well, this person does that. I like how they live. What was your experience of sports growing up? Did you play any sports? Did you go to sports with your parents? How did you get introduced to sports from a young age?
I was an alpha male for sure, an athlete. I played a lot of football early on. Didn't like it as much because I hated people running into me really fast. Got into basketball and martial arts. Stuck with basketball. Martial arts was fun for probably exercise, and I like Bruce Lee, so everybody's pretending to be Bruce Lee, making nunchucks and stuff. But the basketball is where I really kind of excelled. I was pretty good point guard. I was not one of these 6-foot guys, so I had a few invites to try out for teams, for scholarships. And I played at 5-star. Ralph Sampson was one of the kind of older guys there.
Oh, wow.
And so it was a cool experience. Dick Vitale was there. I mean, I had a great experience. But for me, sports really was a way to be a little different. So my parents were educators, and they taught in the schools, so I couldn't act too crazy. And I didn't want the cool guys to pick on me, so I could beat most of them in basketball. I could definitely beat them fighting. And so they just said BK is different. And so sports was my shield to be kind of, I guess, in the middle, where I did my work. I wasn't quite hanging out with the cool guys, but I was a ball player. Yeah. And that there was some credibility in that. And I developed a reputation for being a decent person. And then when I went to college, I tried out for the junior varsity basketball team, and it was no money in it, and I enjoyed it, but ended up playing intramurals. We won the school championships. I was happy about that. And I realized that academics and studying and going to graduate school and then ultimately to law school would be the way for me to get to my dreams and live my best life. And so, but the lessons learned through sports from a young age all the way to now, teamwork, camaraderie, having a coach, mentors, working with other people, playing your strength, all those things you apply for a lifetime. So I'm grateful to sports, and I'm so happy that I had an opportunity to play.
Cool. I think I mentioned this earlier on this, but obviously we've been talking about this for a while. Is what we're doing in February with the film festival is asking college students to submit their the short film on the first Black athlete from a sport at their university. What are your thoughts on that, and how the stories can be impactful to the larger society?
I think the exercise in and of itself will be impactful because my guess is nobody's ever asked them to do that. And so part of the way that you get to learn new information is you have to do the research. I was in an engineering class and we were talking about Thomas Edison and the light bulb, and the professor didn't mention Lewis Latimer and how his filament is the one we actually have today. And there happened to be a Black guy and how it improved upon the light bulb. And he said he didn't know that. So he wasn't being racist when he left it out. He just didn't know. But that's what happens. You leave stuff out. So I think having these young people to do the research in and of itself will be a growth experience for them. And then when you start to ask why, and why did it take so long, or even how the person was treated, because being the first isn't always the hardest thing.
Yeah.
I've read many accounts where the first graduate of some schools, the first Black graduate maybe had to sit in a mop closet across the hall from where the white students were sitting. And so they had to, strain to see the board, really couldn't participate because they were in a way. And it's just foolishness, meanness, ridiculousness. And they made it through. So there's some understandable disdain and likely anger, because when it comes down to it, and you understand that nobody's better than you, and they're just treating you this way because they can, it can be upsetting. And so that's why I am proud of the way the African American and Jewish community worked together, because they were getting some of the similar treatment. And I think we have to keep working together. I think in many ways we let the pressure off the gas. Yeah. And so we've had a resurgence of really popularized foolishness. People waving the Nazi flag and the Dixie flag all on the Capitol at major universities. Obnoxious, insane, totally uninformed about the history of this country, where those symbols actually come from and what they mean.
Yeah, I mean,
what you thought?
it's scary. I mean, who would have thought, you know, I mean, certainly 4.5 years ago, you wouldn't have thought that it was ever going to be possible.
Yeah,
But even 6 months ago, you wouldn't think. I mean, it's,
yeah,
you know, I've got 3.5-year-old twins, and we're moved to Houston, and we're figuring out where to put them in school next year. And we're, you know, partially what's going on, we decided to put them in a Jewish day school for a few years so that they get the history, you know, and learn the Jewish culture as
yeah,
kids. But I mean, I think, you know, even, you know, going back to the 1936 Olympics with Jesse Owens, like, I mean, you know, you're talking about the Nazi regime, Aryan white power, and, you know, you get Jesse Owens basically run directly through that, and they would have rather him, a black athlete, compete than a Jewish athlete. You know, so I mean, I think we're tied together from throughout history, and especially, you know, from those games. I mean, it's, you
I
know,
think so.
pretty
Yeah,
incredible.
yeah, I think so. And the cool thing is that he can be a hero for all of us. And so what people of goodwill, people of good conscience, people who have honor have to continue to do is take the high road, to keep the pressure on the gas, um, and to not let someone convince us that we should lean on our differences. And we should be the persons who help others to appreciate, lean on the things that make us one. That's where the victory is.
Yeah,
And
and celebrate the
that's what I'm
differences.
doing.
Yeah, and celebrate the differences in different ways so you can come together
Yeah,
in a common viewpoint.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
cool, awesome. Well,
All right.
yeah, thanks
Well,
for the time, and you
of
know,
course.
I know we talked about maybe putting a mentorship program together for the kids that are doing these college short sports films. So I'll kind of keep you posted on that, and we'll kind of
Okay.
see what kind of submissions we get. But I'm
All
looking
right.
forward to talking to you more, and yeah, I appreciate the time.